Okay, you're welcome. My name is Legendary Boss 247, and in this video, we shall be dealing with palazzo trousers. So, if you want to make a palazzo trouser, I have this measurement with me, and my advice is that you go and watch my basic trouser videos. If you've not done that, I mean your simple straight pants or trousers, right? So if you want to make a palazzo, it's very much almost the same thing, right? So you're going to watch closely on this. Of course, the first thing I want to do is to give my side seam allowance 0.5. That is after folding my fabric. Please, what I'm doing here is what you're going to do on your fabric, exactly the same thing. So I am using this paper as my fabric. Do exactly the same thing I'm doing here on your fabric, and then you can cut. So please, you want to fold your fabric and just wide enough to accommodate your thigh. Now my thigh measurement is 24. So when you divide 24 by 2, it gives you 12. You add 1 inch to that. That should be the width of your fold. So if this fold is up to 13 inches, you are good to go. Like here, I have more than 13. I don't really bother about this because this is on paper, right? So if you're dealing with your fabric, just simply divide your thigh by 2 and add 1 inch to that, then you can fold, right? So in this case, we should be having 13 inches as our fold, right? So with that, we are good to go. So if you folded that on your fabric, just come to this point here and you give your side seam allowance 0.5 or 0.75, whichever amount you want to use as your side seam allowance. That is the allowance which you use to join your front trouser block to the back, whichever. Me, I prefer 0.5. So this is my 0.5, right, all the way down like this. And then you can proceed to draw out your trouser block. And what is our trouser block? The trouser block is simply your hip measurement divided by 4. Now what is my hip measurement? My hip measurement, hip circumference here is 40 divided by 4 gives me 10. So you mark your 10 from this half inch here. From the half inch line, I have 10, 10, 10, and 10 down there. So you connect them together, and that is called the trouser block. This is the trouser block. Hip divided by 4. Hip divided by 4. So we'll have this. And then on this now, we can now mark our waist to hip, waist to crotch depth, waist to knee, and the full length. Now, of course, we are using a waistband on this trouser. It's an English style, so we are using a waistband. So if you have a measurement like this, my waist to hip is 8, to crotch depth is 10, to knee is 21, and the full length is 40. In all of these measurements, I'm going to subtract 1 inch. 1 inch each from each of these measurements before applying it on my fabric here, right? So my waist to hip, that is 8, I will mark 7. Why? Because I am still going to add a band to this trouser. So when I add my band, it becomes 8. I'm using an average band of 1.5 inches. Now you would wonder why I'm using a band of 1.5 inches height, but I'm subtracting 1 inch from the measurement. Yes, the remaining half inch goes for my seam allowance, the joining allowance between your band and trouser. That is why I'm subtracting 1 inch instead of 1.5, although the band I'm bringing on is 1.5 inches height, right? So you don't subtract the total 1.5 because you need to leave half inch for the seam allowance between the trouser and the band. In same way, if you want to use a band of 3 inches height, you will subtract 2.5 inches from those measurements, right? 3 inches height, you subtract 2.5 inches. The remaining half inch you left is for the sewing allowance, so get that right. So my shoulder to hip, my waist to hip is 8, but I marked 7. My crotch depth, that is the waist to the crop depth is 10, but I'll mark 9. Then my waist to knee is 21. Of course, I'll mark 20. And the same thing with my full length. My full length of this trouser is supposed to be 40, but I'll be marking 39, like this, 39. So that when we add our band, we'll get exactly what we want. So I'm going to put a line here. This is my hip line, my crotch depth. You see, I intentionally push the crotch depth line out here because that is where I'm going to be measuring my thigh. So I pushed it out here, right? This is my knee line. And here is the full length of the trouser. And of course, you're not going to stop at the full length. You will add 2.5 inches to the base for your folding in allowance, your hem allowance, right? So I'm adding 2.5 here, right? Like this. So with this, we can now start to impute our circumference measurement. Now, starting from the waist, the very first thing you want to do is to simply go in here by ½ inch, right, on the waistline there, and then you can now measure your waist divided by 4. Now my waist circumference is 30, divided by 4 is 7.5. And I said if you want to do waist allocation, if you're a student of mine, you are free to do so. If you know about my waist allocation method, you know that your front waist is supposed to be bigger than the back because of the tummy. Simply for the new student, the waist allocation looks like this. Front waist, FW, is equal to your total waist, TW, all over 2 plus 0.5, right? So imputing 30 into this, total waist is 30. 30 all over 2, 15, plus 0.5, 15.5, and divided by 2 because we have our two fronts here, gives us 7.75, right? So it's just a question of 0.25 inches extra, right? So you can ignore that. If you don't know about that, if you are not used to my waist allocation formula, you can ignore that and simply divide your waist by 4, right? So whichever, let's go for waist divided by 4. We have 30 divided by 4, that gives us 7.5. This is 7.5. For my old student who knows about waist allocation, I said you can use your 7.75 from your waist allocation formula, right? So we have that as our waist. Of course, this is our hip divided by 4. We have divided that by 4 already. Our hip is 40, divided by 4 gives us 10, which is already this width here, you can see. So my waist is going to be connected to this, and this also to this point, right? For your waist and your hip, you divide by 4, while from the thigh down, you divide by 2, right? The simple reason is because the waist is made up of 4 pieces of fabric for your trouser. The hip is also made up of 4, while from the thigh down we have two pieces, right? So that is my waist. This is my hip measurement already taken. Then you go for your thigh circumference. You want to apply your thigh circumference here. It's simply your thigh divided by 2. My thigh is 24, divided by 2 gives me 12, right? So you simply measure your 12 from here, just any inch below your crotch depth. You can measure it directly on the crotch depth. You can come down by 1 inch. You are free to do that. So this is from here, we have 12 here, right? This is 12. And then since we are making a palazzo, you are simply going to measure this 12 all the way down, right? So the only fitted part here is going to be your thigh. So we have 12, 12, 12 all the way down, and this gives us our palazzo, the base, right? So this is 12. Remember, we have done a fitted trouser,